Hi, I'm Anna Griffiths. I'm the Access and Interpretation Coordinator at the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust, and for this week's Sculpting Shakespeare blog post, I've chosen not to look at a sculpture inspired by one of Shakespeare's works, but instead I've come down to the museum collection strong room, and I'm looking at a relatively small wooden sculpture which was inspired by the life and times of William Shakespeare, and in particular a member of his immediate family, that being Dr. John Hall, who was married to Susanna Shakespeare, William Shakespeare's daughter. Now, this was sculpted in the 1980s by a sculptor called William Piper-Spruitt, and it was commissioned by Miss Moira Benton and presented to the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust. But it is depicting a physician and a patient in the 17th century, which is the time when Dr. Hall was working here. And an interesting fact about this sculpture is that it was actually carved from the wood of a lime tree that was growing in Hallscroft's garden. Hallscroft is the property in Stratford-upon-Avon that was lived in for a short while by Susanna and John Hall before William's death, and it's now looked after by the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust. Some of the detail on this sculpture is really wonderful, so I will just give you a closer look. So you can see here the physician, particularly like the intricate detail that's gone into his ruff around his neck, and then I also really like the expression on the patient's face, the eyes just gazing intently at the doctor, waiting to hear the outcome of her consultation. Now, this sculpture reminds me, and perhaps was even inspired by a brilliant 17th century oil painting that is still hanging in Hallscroft today, and that is of the Doctor Casting the Water, which is a painting by Ossius Dyke, and what casting the water means is that the doctor was inspecting the patient's urine. So maybe that's what's actually happening in this sculpture here. But it's a really interesting sculpture, and I think it's particularly interesting the ties it has with Dr. John Hall, and the fact that it was made from a tree that stood in his garden.